Today we're talking about adjusting to being single again after losing a spouse to divorce or death. So for widows and divorcees, this video is for you.
Remember to like and subscribe to LilyTube. One of my readers wrote in and asked, how about an article on adjusting to single life? She was in a position of really living alone for the first time in her life. And it got me thinking, the first time I had ever really lived alone for any lengthy period of time was after my divorce. And I gotta tell you, it sucked. There were times when I just turned the TV on, even when I wasn't listening to it, just for some background noise, because the silence was so deafening. Cathy, did you experience the same kind of thing?
Because I'm a music teacher, I actually really like silence. So there's a part of me that liked that part, but it was a huge adjustment. And that part was really hard, especially sleeping alone. That was the worst part for me after sleeping with someone for 14 years. Once I adjusted to being single, then when we got married, it took a little adjusting, getting used to sleeping with someone again, but I loved that. That adjustment was much easier.
Me and my former wife had a fairly active home life. Kids, noise, activities. There was always something going on. And then when I went to living alone, that was just a very different atmosphere for me. There's a conundrum that I faced, on the one hand feeling lonely, and on the other hand not really being ready. And I knew that. One of the things that a lot of singles do because of this sort of deep loneliness, a lot of singles try to find another relationship as soon as they can. And there are some financial pressures driving that too. But I want to suggest that we don't hurry up to replace what we've lost. For one thing, if you've been married for 10 or 15 or 20 years, you don't replace that in 3 or 4 months of dating with someone else. But I think there are a lot of times when people are kind of afraid to move on, and you get this sense that when they say, I'm just focusing on myself, or I'm just focusing on my kids, that there is a certain amount of fear and trepidation surrounding those things. So how do we fulfill that need that we have for adult company without running out and getting into a new relationship before we're ready? Well, I have 7 different ideas. The first one, Cathy alluded to it a minute ago. Build a support system. I had had lots of friends in the past, but I hadn't communicated with any of them for a long time. So I started reaching out to people in my past. I had a cousin who had been divorced a few years earlier and had kind of been down the road I was traveling, and he really became my best friend during that period of time and supported me a lot. And a lot of these people I hadn't seen or had anything to do with in years, not a single one of them called me out on that and said, well, I haven't heard from you all this time and now you're getting divorced, so you're looking for people to be friends with, go jump in the lake. Nobody said anything even close to that. Everybody was very accepting, sympathetic to my situation, willing to listen and be a good friend. And I tell you, when I was adjusting to being a divorced man, 2 things more than anything else helped me: my faith and my friends. And really those were the 2 big anchors that I had in that period of time. Do you relate to that in terms of building a support system?
After I got divorced from my first husband, I did not know how to be alone, and I was very codependent. I had yet to learn how to overcome that, and I ended up getting married to the first man who came into my life, and his family was so supportive, and they became my network. And I think in a lot of ways that second marriage, even though it didn't work out long term, I learned a lot from his family and their friendship and their support, and even the things that they did for self-development that then I incorporated into my own life, and I think it will bless my whole life. I guess I did it in a roundabout way and not in the most helpful way in terms of making sure I was really ready to remarry. But lesson learned, and it was part of my life path, and I accept that. But I do think I did a lot more of that social networking after that, when I got really intentional about wanting to find the very best match for me and not settling for just the first person that came along. If you would like an efficient way to make new friends, we welcome you to come and join our Love in Later Years group on Facebook. Everyone that joins our group has been so constructive in the conversations they're having. They post questions and they're very supportive of one another, and they're just stellar people. I actually recently heard someone say both the old and new friends that she was making trumped all the pain of losing her husband.
Second method of adjusting, radical acceptance. So if you've listened to a lot of our videos, you've probably heard this term before. Radical acceptance is quickly and completely making a mental shift to accept the situation you're in for what it is. That doesn't necessarily mean that you wanted it that way, that you are stuck there forever. What it means is you look at it, what it means to your life today, and you say, okay, this is my path. Kind of funny little example about this. 15 years ago or so, I had a stomach ache for a year. Several different doctors looked at it. They tried various different things. They told me I had GERD and other stuff, until I found a doctor that tested me for celiac disease, which means I'm intolerant of gluten. I can't digest it properly. When I went in to see her, I kid you not, I didn't know what gluten was. So I go into her office that day when the tests came back, and she said, well, it is what I suspected. You have celiac disease. And I'm like, okay, well, how long do I have to live? She said, you can have a normal lifespan, but you have to stop eating gluten. I said, okay, how long do I have to do that? And she said, forever. It doesn't feel fair, but it is what it is. If I don't want to have massive stomach aches and other health problems, I have to accept this new reality about my life. That's radical acceptance. Now, that was before I got divorced. I struggled for 4 years, waking up every day feeling like I'd been kicked in the stomach, not because of celiac, but because of grief. Instead of accepting my new path, I was struggling against it.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. I was really distraught about the loss of my marriage, and it's not what I wanted, or at least I thought it's not what I wanted, and instead of accepting it, I kind of kicked and fought against it, and it hurt me more than it needed to. I don't believe that any kind of loss of a relationship, if it had love in it, is not going to be painful. That's a reality that we do have to accept, but we don't have to add that dirty pain fighting against it to the clean pain that can just be processed and then released.
We're not saying in terms of radical acceptance that means you have a shift in your thoughts and suddenly you're all better. That's a huge change. And if you loved that person, even if you were the one that felt it necessary to ask for the divorce, that's going to hurt. But taking it and saying, okay, this is my new reality, it is going to hurt for a while. That's all very clean pain, as Cathy was just pointing out. The dirty pain is all the judgments we hang on it. Third suggestion, start to rebuild your identity as an individual. Kind of a silly little thing that I did at the time I became newly single is I started redecorating my bedroom in an African theme. I put fake zebra and lion heads on the wall. I put a giraffe print on my king-size duvet, came up with a bunch of other African kind of decorations. It was because I knew that my former wife would never have allowed that. I just said, okay, well, I'm going to do something that I want to do. This is going to help me to identify myself as bolder and so on. Kind of a silly example, but I think it helped me to move forward with my life just by changing some things up and saying, okay, this is something I want to do. Now, eventually I got tired of the African decor and stopped doing it, redecorated again, but point being, start to find your identity again, whatever it is that you used to love or something you've always wanted to try.
And you never know where it might lead. Incidentally, Jeff's African room was like a giant vision board for what we call our pre-honeymoon, where we got engaged on a safari in Africa.
Absolutely, and going to Africa was a dream come true for me. Is there something that you did to try to develop your own identity post-divorce?
Well, I think reconnecting with my roots as a musician and becoming more actively involved in my string quartet and in my teaching career, that gave me a lot of comfort and peace. And also it gave me opportunity to associate with good people. Let's talk a little bit about kids, because you were probably more quiet when you didn't have your kids with you, and so was I. But then when they were home, you've got all the responsibility of being a single parent.
Well, I had that for quite a long time before I got divorced in a lot of ways. So I was used to that, and I actually like that. I wanted that.
I think one of the things that helped me not feel so lonely when my kids were with their dad is that I scheduled all of my private violin lessons when they were with their dad. And so I had wonderful people coming to my home for violin lessons. I really thoroughly enjoyed the time I spent with them, and I felt like it was my calling, that I was doing something important, and it helped me provide for them financially, so then when they were home, I could be with them. For anyone who might be in a similar situation, I think just having a positive attitude about the custody sharing and what that afforded me to be able to do, balance all the parts of being a single parent, that positive attitude I took towards it really helped me adjust.
Fourth suggestion, have fun. What if you've always wanted to climb Mount Everest? I'm not suggesting that's everybody's dream, but there's no one there to tell you you can't anymore. Take a trip to Europe. If you wanted to take your kids to Disney World, save your pennies and do that. There is no one in your way saying, no, we can't afford it, don't do it. And I didn't have a lot of money then, but I took my kids on lots of inexpensive road trips to fun places. Like Yellowstone National Park is an amazing place to take kids. Those are some of my best memories. And you know what? Like I said, there was no one there to tell me I couldn't do that.
I've always appreciated that you took that time that was so finite and precious with your kids and did what you could. And it didn't have to be expensive, but you made it happen. My kids were younger than yours, and we'd just call everything a party. We'd come up with a theme, and we'd say that we were having a party, and they'd be so excited. The thought to have a party and have it be fun.
If you want to become a more fun person and have more fun with life, be intentional about it. Fifth suggestion, start a spiritual and personal development. I read great books. I saw a counselor to help me deal with the depression and anxiety. I took serious and intentional efforts to become a better, stronger, and happier person. There was no one to tell me who I needed to be for them. It was my decision, who do I want to be? And then I could find someone who wanted the same things, and you know what? I did. The fact that we together, after getting married, wrote a book and started an organization to help mid-singles and later married couples, well, that became a foundation of our relationship later on, and it's the foundation of a lot of the work we do now.
And we're continuing to grow. We did an interview with Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. She's a really popular Latter-day Saints sex therapist, and the number one factor that she believes is to be self-reflective and willing to actively be a participant in intentionally becoming your best and highest self. And I really think that helps our marriage to be stronger than it would be otherwise.
Sixth suggestion, face your finances. Now, I know this is hard. You may be a poor single mother that hasn't worked much outside the home. You may be a single dad who's got child support obligations and alimony and whatever else, and that's really hard. Now, I know in my situation, I went through a couple of career setbacks during the same period of time as my divorce. Probably not coincidentally. I've seen that happen a lot. People have their mind on the marriage they're losing and their career suffers. I was so filled with anxiety about debts that I owed and bills that were stacking up and I didn't have a way to pay them. Even if you don't have the money to pay all these bills that are mounting, just having your brain around what you owe and what bills you have coming in every month and whatever, creating spreadsheets or whatever you need to sort of keep track of all of it, that will give you a sense of control that will lessen your anxiety. A way you can address it is to get control over the information. And then secondly, you start to look for creating a budget and maybe figuring out how to make more money to deal with your problem.
And if you happen to be in a little bit more favorable position, you might do something more like I did. Instead of decorating my house differently, I created my own personal financial outlook. I was so excited to have my own net worth statement. It might have been a lot less than what I had in my partnership, but it was mine. And I took pride in it, and I'd plan my budget, and I'd look at my income, and I'd make sure my expenses were less than my income, and so that I could save a little bit, and I'd see my net worth grow. And I believe that unknowingly, I was using the law of attraction. I actually thought I was just being organized, but I think ultimately that law of attraction, it took a play in my situation where I was being intentional about what I wanted, setting goals, and then allowing the universe or God, to bring the blessings into my life that would allow those goals to be achieved.
No prizes for guessing who our family CFO is. Seventh suggestion, date. I know this might seem like a contradiction to what I said earlier about don't run out to get another relationship. Not all dating has to be seriously headed for marriage. Now, when I was newly single, I dated a lot of different people, and I was very honest with them in saying, I'm still trying to get my life together after a divorce. I'm freshly divorced. I'm still healing. If anything's going to develop, it may take a while, and I'm not in a position to date anyone exclusively. What dating did for me at that point was it was a way to have some more adult company. It was a way to meet interesting people instead of sitting home watching TV or something.
And you're practicing.
Yeah.
You're practicing getting to know people.
Exactly, and it was kind of in a way a motivation for me to be more healed and ready to date, because I'd meet someone really great and I'd think, oh man, I kind of wish I was further down this path and ready for this because she's awesome. I'll never forget the first date I went on post-divorce. I dressed up, I put on cologne, I had butterflies in my stomach, feeling these feelings I hadn't had in a long time. We didn't kiss, we didn't so much as hold hands. But what I want to say about it is I left that date on cloud 9 just because I realized the company of a beautiful, intelligent, capable woman was still one of the greatest pleasures in life. I had a wonderful evening, and that stands alone. That's by itself. I didn't need it to become more than that. But I think dating in a non-serious way, if you're not really healed enough to go on to a relationship, can help that healing process, as long as you're honest and upfront with your partners about what you're looking for.
Well, and I think that's a good way to start dating anyway, because we all really want to be chosen. So part of adjusting to being single again will be developing those relationships and friendships that aren't too serious. You'll need to get used to, if you're interested in someone, holding back and taking your time and being patient. You were used to being in a fully committed relationship, and brand new acquaintances, you can't jump there. I mean, people do it all the time, but it really doesn't work to just jump in to a commitment before you really know someone. So just remember that dating is much, much different than being in a relationship, in a marriage, in a committed, forever kind of companionship, and you want to treat it differently.
Just to summarize, our 7 suggestions for adjusting to being single again are: build a support system, radical acceptance, creating a new identity as a single person, have fun, begin a spiritual or personal development journey, face your finances, and date.
What did you think? We'd love to hear about your own experience with adjusting to being single again. And remember, any time is a great time for more love in your life.